The blizzard pursued her with relentless fury. Ice crystals slashed across the vast Wyoming landscape like razors, tearing at Sarah Whitman's exposed flesh and choking her throat with frozen air. She pressed forward through the blinding whiteness, her arms wrapped around a threadbare bundle, her worn boots leaving crimson traces in the snow where they had finally split apart. 3 days of walking had brought her to this. If she collapsed now, the winter would claim her completely. Sarah never intended to become this, solitary, frozen, rejected by every settlement she encountered. But rumors move swifter than any wagon. Wherever her path led, the familiar tale shadowed her footsteps. A woman destroyed by her own foolishness, a disgrace too wicked to excuse. Each retelling warped it further, transforming her into something horrific in respectable minds. The actual truth, filled with anguish, not evil, mattered little. Communities required a scapegoat, and Sarah proved easier to denounce than the man who had abandoned her. Her strength failed. She crashed onto the frozen earth, agony shooting through her limbs. For a heartbeat she remained motionless, snow already gathering over her form as though hungry to bury her. Perhaps she should surrender. Death might offer more mercy than this eternal exile, but deep within, a flame sparked. She forced herself upright, jaw clenched against both the bitter cold and crushing despair, and stumbled ahead once more. The endless prairie swirled around her in confusion. Direction had become meaningless. Then, like divine intervention, she glimpsed it, a faint glow piercing the tempest. Initially, she assumed her mind was betraying her. But as she lurched closer, the outline of a ranch emerged from the white veil. Smoke twisted from its chimney. Sarah clawed her way to the entrance and rapped with her remaining strength. The sound seemed pathetic against the storm's roar. She attempted again, more forcefully this time. Finally, the door swung wide. A figure filled the threshold, tall, broad-shouldered, dark-haired. His features bore the marks of countless seasons of wind and sun, his eyes a rich brown that narrowed as they examined her condition. Sarah forced out a single word through her chattering jaw. "Please." For an endless moment he remained silent. Snowflakes collected in his hair and beard as he assessed her. Torn garments, frost-damaged fingers, desperation burning in her gaze. A woman arriving alone during a blizzard could spell various kinds of danger. She watched him calculate the hazard, but then, with a brusque gesture, he moved aside. "Come in!" Heat struck her like a physical force as she staggered inside. Flames danced in a stone fireplace, casting amber light across solid wooden furnishings. The space was modest, but it offered refuge, secure, stable, beautifully warm. Sarah nearly crumpled immediately, but the man gestured sharply toward a chair. "Sit before you collapse," she complied, shivering violently as melted snow pooled around her feet. He vanished into another room and returned with a thick blanket, wrapping it around her shoulders. Then he filled a metal cup with steaming coffee and placed it in her frozen grasp. "It's bitter." Sip slowly. The first taste scorched her throat, but warmth spread through her chest like returning life. "Thank you," she breathed. The man settled into the chair opposite her, his stare steady and unreadable. "Clayton Reed, this is my property, Sarah," she responded. Then, remembering how her complete name had brought only misery, she added quietly, "Just Sarah." Clayton acknowledged this with a nod, accepting her evasion. His eyes shifted to her bundle, to the inadequacy of her clothing. He leaned back, stroking his jaw. "Storm will last the night. Possibly longer." "You fleeing from someone?" Sarah focused on her coffee. What could she reveal? That she ran from falsehoods, from vicious gossip that wounded deeper than blades? "From something," she finally said, "but nothing that will endanger your home." His gaze lingered on her another moment. Then he rose abruptly and began arranging blankets near the fireplace. "You'll rest here tonight. When the weather clears, you'll continue on." Her heart plummeted. One night, that was his entire offer. Yet it exceeded her wildest hopes. "I understand." Clayton made no reply. He moved through the cabin with quiet precision, feeding the fire, checking the windows. His actions were practiced, those of someone long accustomed to solitary self-reliance. Still, when he glanced her way again, something else flickered in his expression, something he seemed reluctant to acknowledge. Sarah huddled within the blanket, observing him by the firelight. He wasn't a heartless man. That much was clear. Melancholy marked the line of his mouth, isolation evident in how he labored without speaking. Perhaps he too carried specters. Outside, the wind shrieked like something alive. Inside, Sarah absorbed its rage and allowed herself to experience, for the first time in years, the delicate comfort of protection. Tomorrow would deliver fresh terrors, fresh condemnation. But tonight, in this remote ranch house with this cautious stranger, she drew breath, and that sufficed. Dawn arrived gray and merciless. Snow continued its assault across the grassland, the storm showing no compassion. Sarah awakened, coiled in a blanket beside the fire, warmth still embracing her body. For one brief instant, she forgot her location. But then reality crashed back. Clayton Reed's ranch, her tenuous sanctuary. Clayton was already moving, stoking the flames. He noticed when she stirred. Livestock won't wait for weather. They require feeding. I'll assist, Sarah declared, straightening quickly. It's treacherous, he cautioned. The barn's near, but in this whiteout you could become lost. You've barely got stamina. Sarah raised her chin. I promised I wouldn't be a burden. Allow me to prove it. His eyes searched hers, then softened marginally. Mary's jacket is in the chest. Take it. Gloves too. The name registered, but she asked no questions. She located the coat, quality wool, carefully preserved. She slipped it on, sensing the spirit of whoever had previously worn it. Clayton secured a rope from house to barn, leading them through the blinding snow. Wind tore at their garments, stealing breath with each step. Sarah gripped the rope with one hand, a feed bucket with the other, compelling herself to continue. Inside the barn, air remained frigid but mercifully still. Roughly 20 cattle crowded in their stalls, lowing desperately. Water barrels had frozen solid. Clayton swore quietly, breaking ice while Sarah spread hay. Then they discovered the cow heavy with calf. She lay on her flank, laboring. Clayton knelt, concern creasing his features. She's premature. Storm stress. I've assisted with birthing before, Sarah offered quickly. What do you need? He studied her sharply, then nodded. Steady hands. For the following hour, they labored side by side, battling cold and nature itself. Sarah held the lantern firm, handed tools, murmured calming words to the struggling animal. The calf was positioned wrong, but with Clayton's power and her gentle guidance, they coaxed it into existence. When the wet, trembling creature finally drew its first breath, Sarah's eyes brimmed with tears. Life, fragile yet fierce, had conquered the storm. Clayton rubbed the calf down with straw, his large hands surprisingly tender. Then he looked up at Sarah, and momentarily something wordless passed between them. Recognition, respect, shared purpose. You did well, he said. So did you, she whispered. The return journey was brutal. Wind had strengthened, snow blinding. At one point, Sarah lost her grip on the rope and spun into the white emptiness. Terror seized her chest, but then powerful hands caught her, pulling her back. Clayton's arms remained around her waist until they stumbled through the door. You could have frozen, he growled, shaking snow from his shoulders. So could you, she retorted. But that calf lives. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. Then Clayton poured them both hot coffee. The disagreement left unspoken. The storm raged for days. They labored together, mending torn fabric, repairing leather, conversing in careful exchanges. At night, Sarah lay on her bedding near the fire, listening to wind howl and to Clayton's steady breathing across the room. One evening after supper, she revealed the truth about James Hartley in Missouri. The promises shattered, the child lost, the lies that destroyed her reputation. She anticipated disgust, the hardening of his jaw, the coldness she had witnessed so often before. But Clayton simply listened. When she finished, he stirred the fire and said, "Sounds to me like you were wronged. Doesn't make you any less of a woman." Her throat constricted. No one had ever spoken those words before. The days merged together. They confronted the storm, the livestock, the endless cold. And gradually Sarah felt something she thought permanently lost: purpose. She wasn't merely surviving. She was contributing, supporting, living, but provisions dwindled. Supplies intended for one had stretched to accommodate two. One evening, as Sarah carefully consumed half her portion, Clayton's eyes flicked to her plate. "You need to eat." "So do you," she replied. "I won't take more than my fair share." His stare was fierce. "You're under my roof. That makes you my responsibility. Her chest ached at the word, responsibility. Yes, but she yearned to be more than that. That night, unable to sleep, Sarah rose to find Clayton sitting by the fire, rifle across his knees, watching, protecting. You should rest, she said softly. He shook his head. Storm's easing. Tomorrow or the next day it'll break. Then you'll need to move on. The words cut through her. Move on. She had known it was inevitable, but hearing it spoken made her heart clench. Unless there was another possibility. Clayton's eyes found hers across the firelight. Weary, guarded, but with something else flickering there. Something he was restraining. What if you remained? He said at last, the words low and rough. Sarah froze. Remained? Not charity, he added quickly. Partnership. Room, board, and fair wages come cattle drive. It's honest work. No one out here to judge. Sarah's breath caught. A home, employment, safety, opportunity. But her heart was no longer quiet. It whispered dangerous thoughts about his capable hands, his solitary eyes, the warmth she felt when he regarded her. Could she stay and not desire more? Could she protect her heart if every day she stood beside him? I'll consider it, she said finally, though the decision had already begun forming in her chest. Clayton nodded once, settling back in his chair. But as Sarah returned to her bedding, she caught the glimmer of something in his gaze. Not just duty, not merely partnership, something deeper, and though the storm still raged outside, Sarah's heart whispered that perhaps, just perhaps, she had finally found where she belonged. The storm finally shattered on the 7th day, leaving the grassland buried beneath mountains of snow. For Sarah, the silence felt almost overwhelming after so many nights of howling winds. She stood at the window wrapped in Mary's coat, watching Clayton carve a path to the barn. The world sparkled white and infinite, but her heart was no longer hollow. She had decided she would remain, and for a time, life settled into rhythm. They fed the cattle, hauled water, repaired storm damage. Sarah cooked, mended, even helped with tasks she had never attempted before. Each evening they shared simple meals, their conversations growing less cautious, more intimate. She laughed again, something she thought she'd forgotten how to do. But peace on the prairie never endured long. Clayton spotted them first, 3 riders approaching across the snow. His face hardened and he reached for the rifle by the door. Get inside, he told her. I won't hide, Sarah insisted. Not anymore. The men reined up in the yard. Their leader, a thin man with cold eyes named Hutchkins, called out, Reed, heard you were keeping company out here. Thought we'd see if the rumors were true. His gaze slid to Sarah and his grin turned cruel. Clayton stood tall on the porch. The lady is here under my protection. She works the ranch with me. That's all there is to it. Your protection? Hutchkins laughed. A woman like her? Everyone in town knows the stories. Maybe you're not as clever as we thought. Clayton's rifle lifted slightly, steady as stone. You'll watch your tongue on my land. The men hesitated, calculating odds. They saw the truth in Clayton's eyes. He would not hesitate to shoot. At last, Hutchkins spat into the snow. This isn't finished, Reed. Women like her bring nothing but trouble. They wheeled their horses and rode off, leaving only their threat hanging in the cold air. Sarah's knees trembled, though she forced herself to stand tall. They'll return, she whispered. Then let them come, Clayton said, voice like iron. But trouble didn't wait for Hutchkins. It came from the town itself. A fever swept through, claiming children and elderly first. The minister, Reverend Blackwood, declared it God's punishment for harboring sin. Soon a crowd of townsmen rode to Clayton's ranch, demanding Sarah leave. Send her away, Reed, the Reverend thundered. She's the cause of this suffering. Clayton stood firm, rifle at his side, voice steady. The sickness came from your saloons and brothel. Not this woman. She's worked hard, harmed no one. I will not cast her out. The argument turned ugly. Voices rose. Men shouted. Then Hutchkins appeared with his gang, grinning at the chaos. A shot cracked the air and the ranch exploded into violence. Clayton fought like the soldier he once was, but they were outnumbered. A bullet tore into his shoulder and he staggered. Sarah screamed, dragging him inside, slamming the door. Blood seeped through his shirt as he collapsed against the wall. Bullets deep, he gasped. Sarah's hands shook, but she found whiskey, rags, hot water. Hold on, she whispered. I won't let you go. She dug the bullet out, tears blinding her as Clayton gritted against the pain. At last, the bleeding slowed and he sagged into unconsciousness. Gunfire cracked outside. Voices shouted, and then footsteps on the porch. The door burst open. Hutchins stood there, revolver in hand, sneer on his face. Looks like Reed's finished. Guess that leaves you and me, sweetheart. Sarah didn't hesitate. She lifted Clayton's rifle, fired, and Hutchins fell back into the snow, dead. The gang scattered, shocked that the woman they mocked had bite of her own. By dawn, the mob was gone. Sarah sat at Clayton's side, holding his hand as first light touched the snow. When his eyes fluttered open, she whispered, "I'm here. I'm not leaving." Weeks passed as he healed. The bond between them grew stronger, no longer just survival, but something deeper. One morning when he could finally stand tall again, Clayton said quietly, "Come to town with me." Sarah froze. "Town after everything?" He nodded. "There's something I need to do, officially." That afternoon they rode into town together. Whispers followed them, but Clayton never released her hand. At the general store, with half the town watching, he declared, "We're here for a wedding. Mine and Sarah's." Gasps, murmurs. The minister protested, but Clayton's voice thundered over him. "I won't hide, and I won't let her be shamed any longer. She's my wife from this day forward." And so it was, right there in the middle of a town that once scorned her. Sarah Whitman became Sarah Reed. Months later, spring arrived, and with it, new life. The ranch prospered. The townspeople, little by little, softened. Some even apologized. Sarah found herself teaching children their letters, her laughter echoing in the small house that was now truly a home. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Clayton slipped his arms around her waist. "Do you regret it?" he asked softly. She leaned into him, eyes on the land they had built together. Not for a single breath. The girl who had once begged for shelter was gone. In her place stood a wife, a partner, and a woman who had found love strong enough to last forever.